Hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or wherever you may be. Thank you for joining today's webinar. We'll begin in about a minute. So just as people, excuse me, as people are still arriving. So just hang tight. Maybe we'll do this as we will begin in a minute. Let me just make some preliminary announcements, and then we'll start. One is that today's webinar will be recorded, and people will receive the full recording likely by tomorrow via email. So just keep an eye out for that. We'll try to get it to you as quickly as we can. Secondly, we always make our webinars. We always find that the webinars are better when there's, when it goes both ways, and when you guys are asking us questions, it's not just us talking. So we do reserve time for Q&A, and you can ask in the questions tab on the GoToWebinar control panel. And we do encourage you to ask questions, ideally on the topic of today's webinar. Try to stick to the topic as much as possible. And we will answer as many as we can. And finally, at the end of today's webinar, we will encourage you to just fill out a short survey. It takes 30 seconds to fill out, and it'll allow us to not only get your feedback about how the webinar went and how we can make them better in the future, but also if you would like to request a one-on-one session about BlazeMeter and performance testing and understanding your reports and how we can help you, it will give you that opportunity to request that as well, and we will get back to you to schedule. So with all that said, today's presenter is going to be Oren Devi. He's a senior salesperson at BlazeMeter. We're going to be talking about understanding load testing KPIs and report results. So Oren, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jason. Thank you everybody for joining the webinar. So like Jason said, the topic will be understanding your load tests and KPIs and report results. Now, before we begin and before I start explaining exactly how I analyze tests, I'm going to show a few examples and show how I could do this in BlazeMeter. It's first very, very important to understand all the different KPIs. And I'm assuming most of you, if not all of you who joined the webinar, already know what KPIs are. But just to start from the basics, number of users are the amount of threads, the amount of concurrent users accessing simultaneously. The hits per second are the amount of requests on your server at the same time in one split second. Errors per second are the amount of errors that are happening in a split second. It could be errors on the application, on the server, whatever errors you'll see, you'll be able to view in BlazeMeter. The response time is how long it takes since the request is made. Latency is how long it is, the time that it takes to the first byte. Now the latency will always be lower than the response time because, of course, a byte is very small. Connect time, this is the time it takes to the first time accessing the site. For a good example is if a new user connects to BlazeMeter, so the first landing page, the second he enters into BlazeMeter, this is the connect time. After he's already in BlazeMeter, all the other pages aren't connect time. It's only the first time he accesses the website. Bytes per second, this is the amount of data processing per second, and it's calculated in bytes, and it's also called throughput. Okay, so here are a few graphs. What I'm about to show is a graph that shows the number of virtual users, VUs, and the average response time and errors per second. So over here you could see a great example. This is a graph that has no bottlenecks, very clean. You could see the response, the users are going up, and then it's holding. And the response time is holding just fine. So this is an excellent graph. There are absolutely no bottlenecks. This does not need fixing. The amount of users does not reflect on the response time. Okay, now over here you could see same exact thing. The users are adding up and then holding. But what happens is the response time goes up. So does this need fixing? That's a good question. So it's up to you to know, obviously, if the amount of users is something that's realistic, something that you expect to have, and if the response time fits your standards, depending on that response time, whatever it is. But this makes sense, obviously. At a certain point, you'll be adding users and the response time will go up. This is exactly what you're saying here. Now, this is a very clear bottleneck because you could see users are adding in, the response time goes up, but now what happens is I also have errors. So the second I have errors, there's a problem here, and this will need fixing. Okay, now the second graph I want to share with you all is a graph that shows the number of virtual users and the hits per second. So again, this is the ideal situation, no bottlenecks. You can see it's very clear. I'm having the amount of users, the blue, adding up, holding. And when I add more users, there's more hits per second. When I hold the users, there's the same amount of hits per second. This is natural and there's no bottlenecks. Now over here, you could see that the hits per second stop going up. If you pay close attention, it does continue going up just a little bit, but in general, the hits per second just freeze. So this is an issue. So what's happening here is each user is reaching its maximum hits per second. So this is a limit. This would need fixing. Obviously, it depends on the amount of virtual users, the test that you're running. But essentially, this is not a good situation because you could see each user reached its limit. Okay, so this last graph, this of course needs fixing. Very similar to the last graph I showed you before. There's errors. So you can see here the hits per second all of a sudden jumps up, and with that, also the errors jump up. So this is a very clear bottleneck that would of course need fixing. Okay, so before we get to the questions, I'm obviously going to show a presentation of BlazeMeter and how I could view all these KPIs in BlazeMeter. So, sorry, let's go ahead and get out of here for 1 second. So this is BlazeMeter. On the left over here, you can see all the recent test runs. On the right, you can see the recent updated tests, the usage report. And I'm going to go also in detail during this webinar on how to analyze the graph and to monitor your graphs over time and to view the different KPI trends. But first of all, I'm going to show you exactly how you could execute a test and to set KPIs. You could set thresholds to your KPIs. So to create a test, you obviously clicked Create Test, and now you have a few different options. So we have the JMeter test, where you simply upload an existing JMeter script that you have. We have the URL API test. So if it's a very basic URL, a very basic API, you can do a URL API test. The multi-test is to test multiple scenarios at the same time, multiple JMeter scripts, multiple locations, multiple different networks. So if you'd like to test from mobile and Wi-Fi at the same time, this can be done with the multi-test. Then we all have Taurus, and also in Taurus, it's also possible to set thresholds to your KPIs. Whoever's not familiar with Taurus, Taurus is an open source tool which we created. Now this enables you to trigger tests onto BlazeMeter through YAML and JSON format. So it's pretty much a wrapper, and you're able to execute Gatling, Locus, the Grinder, Selenium, even C# via Taurus onto BlazeMeter. The WebDriver test, this is for Selenium, and the API test maker is for creating functional API tests. I'm going to go ahead and create a JMeter test. So here's where you upload a JMeter script that you have. Whoever does not have an existing JMeter script, we do have a Chrome extension that helps you record and create a JMeter script. So let's go here to my downloads. Let's see if I could find a recording. Okay, so This is an example of a JMX script that I have. Let's open this up. Now, any CSV file, jar file that you have in JMeter, you simply upload to over here, and it'll be working as well. Next, you're able to set test failure criteria. So you're able to set your different KPIs. So here are our different KPIs which we support. Now, I reviewed some of these with you guys right now. We know what response time is. You could see here the latency, the bandwidth, all these different metrics. Let's keep things simple right now. Let's see exactly what's the average response time. Now, instead of running concurrent users and seeing, okay, here it passed, we could set a threshold. So we'll be able to notice this much more clearly. So you could say if the response time is greater than, let's say, for example, 2,000 milliseconds, you'll get a description too long. Now, if this is the standard, this is the maximum absolute most response time, you could go ahead and even stop the test if you reach one of these pass failure criteria. And you'll just completely stop the test and abort and change things up a little bit. But I personally like not stopping the test, just having the test run to the end, and afterwards I'll be notified if my threshold's passed or if my threshold's failed. So let's go ahead and set another KPI. We could say, for example, if the error error percent is greater than 10, too many. Now, you could take things one step further, and you're also able to schedule tests. So you could have tests run automatically, and you'll be notified by email if your test passed or if it failed, according to the KPIs which you set. So let's go ahead and apply this. So this is the most important, this test failure criteria. Now, in addition, you're also able to set different network. So you're able to set mobile and Wi-Fi. Now, this is how the load will be accessing your application. So right now I selected Wi-Fi. Of course, this has an immediate effect, of course, on latency and bandwidth. Let's apply that. If you integrate with any APM tools for monitoring your server, you're able to integrate with the APM tool over here. We support CloudWatch, CA's APM, New Relic, Dynatrace, AppDynamics, and it's very easily integrated. And if you are using this tool, one of these tools, it's very recommended. Okay, so we have a functional API test. So you could always run a functional API test. No credits are deducted when running a functional API test. You could run a sandbox test up to 20 concurrent users. Now, both of these are for debugging purposes. So running a functional API test will run one thread, and to see if there's any errors in the script before I run a bigger test. The sandbox mode, I'll be able to run up to 20 concurrent users, a 20-minute duration. Also, to see that the JMeter script or whatever I'm trying to test is running properly. And no credits are deducted, it's completely free. So let's go ahead and take it off sandbox mode and we'll execute a real test. Now you can see here I could select many different locations. We support AWS locations, Google, Azure, some private locations. I'm going to go ahead and select a location from London, from the UK. Now you're able to set engines and threads. So each engine can support up to 500 threads. Now if I want to test more than 500, I simply add more engines. So you could add, 10 engines, and that would already be 5,000 threads, 5,000 concurrent users. Let's keep things simple. We'll do one engine of 500. They're able to set the ramp up, iterations, duration. I could go ahead and give this a name. Let's save. And I'll be notified if they pass or if they fail. I'm going to download this JMeter script very quickly so now you guys could see what exactly I have in this JMeter script. So you can notice here there's a Blaze demo page. Here's a reserve page, a purchase page, a confirmation page. And this is a website that I recorded with the Chrome extension. And here are all the requests being made. Notice the credit card type, the token, all this data. Now, I'm just going to show you also the website as well, so you have a better understanding. Let's go to blazedemo.com. Now again, I simply recorded this website with the Chrome extension, and that lets me download the JMeter script. Find flights, choose the flight. So every request that I make, the extension simply recorded it for me. And I could go here and also download this JMeter script. If you click record, and then you'd be able to download it. So let's go ahead and, before I execute this test, I'm going to show you the multitest. So we save this test, and I could click create test and use the multitest feature. So again, why would we want to use the multitest feature? This is because I'll be able to test multiple scenarios at the same time. So I could have multiple JMeter scripts running simultaneously. I could have multiple locations and multiple networks, mobile and Wi-Fi. And of course, different locations have different throughput and latency and bandwidth. So let's go ahead and create this JMeter script that I did 3 times. So this is the test I just created with you, and it's the same exact test 3 times in a row. Now the only difference is we could go ahead and change up the locations. So this one will be from Germany. This one will actually be from London. And this one we could do from Japan. Go ahead and give this a name. Save. Now I'm also going to do mobile as well. So let's go ahead and select network emulation. We'll go ahead and select mobile. Apply. Save. So I am testing right now the same JMeter script, but I'm testing multiple locations and multiple different networks. And you could obviously see here I have a lot of flexibility, and the sky is the limit. And what this page does, it helps me make the load as realistic as possible. So now that we saved it, let's go ahead and click play. You can see I'm executing 3 consoles, 3 engines, and a total of 1,500 threads. Let's go ahead and launch the servers. And now these servers are spinning up. And you can see again, 1 server is from Japan, 1 server from the UK, and 1 server is from Germany. Now the second all these servers are spun up, my test will begin, and I'll be able to see the reporting in real time. And of course, if I set any test failure criteria, if I set any thresholds, I'll be able to see them as well. So while we're waiting for this to spin up, I'm going to go ahead and show you a test I previously ran. So again, BlazeMeter, we have many different ways to execute tests. We have Torus, which I showed you guys before. I'm not going to execute a Torus test because this is not the main focus of this webinar. But it's another way to execute tests I strongly recommend to try out. We have many plugins, so we have plugins for Jenkins, TeamCity, Bamboo, which also enable you to trigger tests. And of course, you could trigger tests through the BlazeMeter GUI, like I did right now by uploading a JMeter script I created, configuring the load, and executing it. So you have many different ways to execute your tests, and any test that you execute, this is the reporting that you'll see. This is the BlazeMeter graphing. Now, this is the summary page, the first page. Now, on the summary page up on top, you're able to see the max amount of users. Now, again, this is the amount of virtual users, concurrent users. And this is 364. Over here, you can see the average throughput. Over here, you can see the error percent. the response time, the 90% time response time. So this is the response time for the users in the 90th percentile. I could see here the average bandwidth. And now down below you could see two very comprehensive graphs. So again, like before, the blue is the ramp up. And over here, at 178 users, I could already identify a bottleneck. So what happens at 178 concurrent users? The hits per second drop. So I'm able to go to my management and show this report and say, okay, we have a bottleneck at 178. Over here, you could see that the response time goes from flat to spiking at 178. So I know this drop in hits per second is due to the response time. The response time shooting up all of a sudden at 178. Timeline report. So on the timeline report, you're able to view all your different KPIs. So here you can see the virtual users for each different page. Now again, here's the confirmation page, the purchase page, the reserve page. Now it doesn't matter exactly whatever's in your JMeter script, you'll be able to view in BlazeMeter. So it doesn't matter if it's an API, if it's a website, an application, a mobile app, whatever you set in your JMeter script, you'll be able to view it here. Now in this situation, I could see here there are different pages, the confirmation page, purchase page, reserve page. So we could see, the hits per second for each different page. You could see the errors for each different page. You could see the average response time. Now let's go ahead and see the average response time for each different page. So I'm able to see which page has the overall longest response time. Now you can see here the purchase page, obviously this is the peak, but overall the confirmation page has the longest response time. So I could focus in on the confirmation page. Okay, so this is the response time of the confirmation page. And I could compare it to the latency. So you can see, the average latency of the confirmation page. Now what this will tell me is how long the response time is since the first byte was made. So you can zoom in, get more of a detailed look. You're also able to download this as an image. And for those of you who are familiar with JMeter or other open source tools, this is really night and day. Analyzing your test with JMeter or a simple open source tool, it's very, very complicated, very, very time consuming, and BlazeMeter saves you a lot of time. Request stats. So this is the raw data. Again, the raw data, you'll see the 90th percentile, the 95th percentile, the 99th percentile, the max response time, the min response time. Here are all my different labels in my JMeter script. You have the timeline up here, which you can focus on. So you can see exactly, the response time or the hits per second in a specific time frame. Now I have the option to export all this data, all this raw data, through JSON format. This is done through an API, or I could download this as a CSV file, and you could see exactly which KPIs you want to download into your CSV file. Engine health. Here I could view the CPU and memory of the BlazeMeter load generator. So again, like I said earlier, each engine could support up to 500 concurrent users. So if I was, for example, to run 1,000 concurrent users on one engine, what would probably happen is the CPU and memory will go up very, very high, and the BlazeMeter engines would collapse. So this is why it's important to test only up to 500 concurrent users per engine. And if I want more load, no problem. Simply divide the load into more load generators. Errors, you're able to see the errors for each different request, exactly which request have the most amount of errors. Like I said earlier, all these errors, they could be happening from the server side, from the application side. I'll be able to see all those errors over here. Now, in this test that I'm executing, this is an example report, but this is the test I'm spinning up right now. You're able to see an additional tab called the failure criteria. And over here, I could see all my thresholds, which I set, and if they passed or if they failed. Now, the test isn't done yet, so right now, it all seems to be good. But we'll wait and see if they pass or if they fail. Original test configuration, you could see what you spun up. In this test, it's very basic. There's one scenario, but you could obviously know with the multi-test, have multiple scenarios, multiple locations, multiple networks. And over here, you'll be able to see all those different configurations. Executive summary. So this is something that you'd be presenting to your board of directors, to your management, or you're able to add the logo of the company and make it look very, very formal. So you can add your own conclusion. You're able to see the most important metrics. So the most important is the average throughput, the response time, the error percent, the top 5 slowest responses, and the top 5 errors. And here you can see the timeline report as well. Now, of course, this can be printed out as a PDF. Okay, awesome. So this is the graph. Now, the test that we're spinning up right now, this is real time. So you can see the graphing looks a little bit funky, and this is because the test only started 4 minutes ago. Now, it's a multi-test, and it's spinning up from multiple locations at the same time, from Japan, from Germany, from London. There are no errors, which is a very good thing. Now, with BlazeMeter, you're obviously able to have an account and add multiple users to the same account, so everybody will be using and having access to the same license. But if somebody's not part of your account, you can still share the test by copying the URL, pasting this into Skype, into Slack, and they'll be able to view your report in real time, so while the test is running. Now we also have the compare feature. Now the compare feature is very important for testing and comparing and analyzing your tests. So obviously it's never recommended to only run one test. What's recommended is to run multiple tests and then to compare in between them. So you're able to, let's go to a test that we have. So you're able to select different reports over here and to compare them very easily. And you can compare the different labels very easily just by simply adding them to over here. Now something else which is very important is the comparing the KPIs. So again, you have many different ways to execute tests. And a very common thing to do is to trigger tests through Jenkins or through Taurus and to test continuously. And you can have these tests scheduled and they'll be running continuously. So at the end you have lots of reports. And it's very important to see how they act. What are they telling you over time? So if we go here to the Taurus test, for example, you're able to go over here and to see all my different tests that I executed. So you could see, for example, the last 25 tests, the last 50 tests, the last 100 tests, and you're able to view all the different KPIs. So again, you could obviously see that, over time, it is improving. The response time is improving. If you want to view a specific KPI, you're able to view that here. For example, the average latency, or you can view the bandwidth, or the hits per second. You're able to view all different KPIs here and to compare in between them. Okay, excellent. So I reviewed exactly, how to create a test, how to set test failure criteria. I also showed a report showed exactly how to analyze it. So I think it's time that we can move on to questions. If anybody has any questions.
Thanks, Oren. Thanks for the presentation. Just to remind people that they can ask questions in the webinar control panel in the questions tab. So anything related to today's webinar about how to measure the KPIs via BlazeMeter load test reports are welcome. Any questions like that are welcome. Excuse me. Also, excuse me. Sorry about that. So let's get to a question right away, and then we'll wait for more to come in. Oren, somebody asked if they'll be able to add or edit KPIs while a BlazeMeter test is running. So, for example, if they want to, if they have a 90th percentile response time, and they want to change it while a test is running, are they able to do that?
So no, those values aren't dynamic for now, but maybe in the future you will be able to, but at the moment you aren't.
Okay. Somebody asked, can I upload a result test file, either an XML or a CSV, into BlazeMeter for analyzing it? That's an interesting question.
I'm not sure. I understand exactly the question. So if the question is, are you able to upload a CSV file, for example, with your JMeter script? Of course that can be done. Just like when I uploaded my JMeter test, I uploaded the JMX file. So if you have a CSV file, you're able to upload that as well, and it will work in BlazeMeter. I hope that answers your question. Now, once you execute your tests in BlazeMeter, you will get the graphing, and again, the timeline report and all the graphing, you'll be able to also download a CSV file to get all the results in a CSV file. And then you'll get your own CSV file with the results. But the JMeter tests, and any test that you have, you'll need to execute them in BlazeMeter to get the report.
Okay. And then he followed up. I think he wants to analyze the result by BlazeMeter. I think he wants to know if he can take maybe from he used a different tool to test, do a test, and then he wants to know basically if he can just upload the results via CSV and just have BlazeMeter reporting on them. I'm not sure if that's possible. But anyway, let's move on.
It's not possible. You would need, like I said before, you would need to run the test in BlazeMeter to get the BlazeMeter reporting.
Okay. So Eric asked, you said something about planning tests daily and mailing reports based on test fail criteria. How do you do this? I think he's asking, how do you mail the reports, get mailed reports?
Okay, so first of all, we have a scheduler. So let me go back to BlazeMeter. So you have a few different ways to schedule a test. One way to schedule a test is via an API call. So you can see you have test scheduler, you could schedule a test. And this can be done via API. Now if you use a CI tool, for example, like Jenkins, you're also able to schedule the test. And you could schedule the test and have pass failure criteria, and you'll be notified. Now, after every test that you execute in BlazeMeter, doesn't matter if you scheduled it or ran it manually or ran it through Taurus, you'll be getting an email that the test executed and with the results of the test in the email. Now, even more than that, you're also able, if you use Slack in your organization, to set up Slack notifications as well. So you'll be getting more notifications as well. So you could set up alerts when the test starts, when the test fails, when the test stops, and etc. And that's integrating BlazeMeter with your CI/CD pipeline. So that's the ideal situation when you have tests running on a nightly basis and you're notified by email and by notifications if it passed or if they failed. Does that make sense?
Okay, I hope so. Um, we also had similar to, I think, about just exporting the results. Somebody asked if you can, if when you see the results, can you export them in an Excel file? I guess as opposed to a traditional like PDF report.
Yes. So if we go into an example report that I have, so let's go to the request stats, for example. Now this is all the raw data, the response time, gets here many different metrics. Now I'm able to export this all in JSON format via an API, and I'm able to download this as an Excel file, as a CSV. So I could download it as a CSV file, and here you can see all different metrics in the CSV file. Okay, here are the labels, the samples, and all the metrics, and now I have them on my computer.
Okay. Some more good questions coming in. Keep it coming, guys. We have some time. If you have good questions, if you want to have questions that we can answer, we will try to do so. Somebody asked, Rudolph asked, what's the limit of the maximum virtual users for load testing?
So that's a very good question. So we could test not only, hundreds of thousands, we could also test millions. Now, we done tests of over 1 million concurrent users, but how many millions? It's a good question. So if somebody has a requirement to test millions of concurrent users, I'd recommend having a call and we could learn exactly the requirements. Off the top of my head, I don't know the exact limit, but if we have a call with a technical expert, we'll be able to give you a straight answer. But there's only, millions of concurrent users. Again, these are concurrent users, so it's a very, very high number, over 1 million concurrent users, and we could support a few million for sure.
Okay. Is there a way to configure our own load generator machines?
So yeah, so let's go back to our free blog. This is guide.blazemeter.com, the same blog I used before for where I showed you the test scheduler. Now over here we also have on-premise. So you could search, for example, on-premise. So you could see you have on-premise requirements. Now the only difference will be the load, instead of coming from the cloud servers, the servers which I showed before and which I selected to generate the load for my test, you'll be able to select your own server. So the load will be coming from your own servers onto the application instead of coming from the cloud.
Okay, and all those articles, by the way, if you want to find more of the articles in that resource, that's guide.blazemeter.com. There's a lot of information there. Okay. Let's see. Is it possible to set up a multi-test, or for example, you set up 2 separate tests where the second test will start after the first test has been running for, let's say, for 2 minutes? That's his question. Like, if he's trying to simulate a sudden spike in visitors, so he wants to know if it's possible to run a multi-test like that.
Okay, so you have a few different options. So first of all, straight out of the box, it can't be done, but you can create a multi-test first of all, like I showed before, and to run multiple tests at the same time. So let's go back to over here, click Create Test, and you create multi-tests. And this way you could have multiple JMeter scripts, multiple tests running at the same time. Now, if you want to add another test to run in the middle, it could be done, but through scheduling the test. So again, we'll go back to our free blog, APIs, test scheduler. This is scheduling tests. And that's how it could be done.
Okay. So there was a question from Sandeep about can a load test report automatically go into a CI pipeline? He mentions Jira, like the Jira and Confluence plugin, or is Jira and Confluence plugin where you can see the trend analysis on multiple tests. So I don't know if you want to, and I know you mentioned like some of the CI integrations before. I don't know if you just want to talk about that again.
So we do have many CI plugins, such as, for example, the Jenkins plugin, which I could show you as well over here. But for the Jira Confluence plugin, we don't yet have one, but it's definitely on our roadmap. Now we are 100% API compatible, so you can obviously see, we have many, many different APIs. So you have a lot of flexibility when it comes to executing tests onto BlazeMeter through an API. But I'm not familiar of a current Jira plugin that we have. But in a plugin that we do have, for example, of a Jenkins, which is probably the most commonly used CI tool. And this is our BlazeMeter Jenkins plugin.
Okay. There was a question earlier, do we need to upload parameter files separately? And also, can we analyze the results based on the test data? I'm not sure exactly what he's asking, but do you have an idea?
Could you repeat the question?
Do we need to upload parameter files separately? That's basically the question. There was two questions in there, but that was, I think, what he was asking.
Okay. So you will need to, to upload parameters in your test, if you want changing parameters, for example, what I showed you in the beginning, it is an example of, if you do it with the recorder, it's only one parameter. So it'd be my name, my credit card number, and if I were to run a test of 1,000 users, it'd be 1,000 people named Oren with my same credit card number. Now, changing parameter is something that will need to be done on the JMeter level. Now, for learning JMeter and learning how to do that, we have a JMeter Academy, which I'll show you shortly. But this is something called CSV dataset config. So you could search CSV data. So using CSV dataset config. And this is a great article that explains to you exactly how to have changing parameters in your test, so in your JMeter script. Now, that said, this is our JMeter Academy, which I really strongly recommend. It's a really excellent place to get started. Let me see, JMeter Academy. Now, this was released very recently, so it's very, very cool. And this really brings you from the very basic level to very advanced level. And you can learn at your own pace, and it's strongly recommended.
Okay, great. Let's see. Do we have somebody was asking a question about the different locations that we have for the load generators, the cloud load generators. So they were specifically asking if we have anything yet that is based out of the continents of Africa or Australia.
So that's good, the JMeter test. So we definitely do have Australia. So we have Sydney. These are all our locations. Again, we have the free plan. So all of you guys, right after the demo, after the webinar, could sign up for our free plan and view all our locations. We have Australia. Out of Africa, you'll have to check and look yourself. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Okay. 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 I think maybe we'll take one or two more. Oh, actually, just a few more just came in. Hold on. Somebody wants to know if BlazeMeter supports running the mobile app tests on a real device. I think it's more like maybe he's looking for browser testing or mobile testing. Do you want to answer?
So the answer is no, but you are able to emulate the network type. So, example, this is the load configuration page. So you're able to select the network and to emulate a network of a mobile. So this will be emulating mobile, but we can't emulate an actual browser if this is the question. So it won't be a real mobile device.
And let's take one last question for now. It was actually a question about response time in general. If we know the answer for this. Some of the question is, Oren, you can see it in the questions tab as well if you would like. Is the response time just the time needed to download the response, or does this also include the loading of resources on the page?
So you can configure it on JMeter. You know, we support both. So you could select them over here, or you could do it manually in your JMeter script. If I understand correctly, you know, you could add timers if you'd like to, and so on. So you have timers, and you could set exactly what you want in JMeter or in BlazeMeter. The timers, of course, the actual timers, we could only do in JMeter, but in BlazeMeter, you're able to configure the load. So the ramp up and the time it takes to reach the maximum amount of concurrent users. And that's the ramp up. So it's how long it takes you to reach the maximum amount of users. For right now, I can see it's 900 seconds. That would be 15 minutes to reach my maximum load.
Okay.
And one last thing, you could also decide if you want to download the embedded resources or not. And this is done on JMeter, now that I'm reading the question.
Okay, great. Oren, maybe there are a few other questions that we'll respond individually via email, just to reach out to you. Thanks for everyone for the great questions today. Very much appreciated. Oren, maybe you can just show the last slide you have, the next step slide. So there was a lot of information that was given today during the webinar. So we just wanted to give you a few places to find out some more information, and we'll probably send some of these in the follow-up email tomorrow as well with the recording. But if you want to get more information on BlazeMeter itself, or if you don't already have a BlazeMeter account and you want to sign up for free to play with the tool and to see the reports yourself, you can do so at any time at BlazeMeter.com. You can follow us on Twitter at BlazeMeter. Oren mentioned actually our knowledge base, which is at guide.blazemeter.com, which is not on this page, but we also have another blog at blazemeter.com/blog, which has basically every use case imaginable for Apache JMeter, a lot of great information on load testing in general, and integrations with CI/CD and running JMeter tests as part of Jenkins and TeamCity and others. You can see all of our previous webinars at blazemeter.com/resources. So you can check them out at any time on demand. Also, Oren mentioned Taurus, which was this open source tool for test automation where you can basically use a YAML file to execute tests from open source tools. That's a free and open source tool, of course, at gettaurus.org. It's really cool. We have, by the way, in our resources page, we have a lot of previous webinars in Taurus as well, with more information on that as well. Thanks to our presenters today, Oren and Debbie. I just want to remind people, if they can, I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, but if you can, please fill out the survey now. It just takes 30 seconds to fill out. We'd love to get your feedback about how this webinar was, and you know, what you liked about it, how we can improve in the future. We do take that very seriously, and also if you would like to request a follow-up session, either with yourself or with your team, to discuss your specific testing needs, we would love that opportunity as well. So have a great rest of the day wherever you are, and we once again thank you and goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.